We welcome everybody to what's going to be a super exciting episode of Legal Tech Week. We promise you, because there's just like tons of stuff to talk about, and we've all been really busy reporting all sorts of big stories this week. And that might be a little bit of a hallucination, but we'll see what there is. There's some stuff to talk about. It is May 30th, 2025, and this is the show where we do talk about the news in legal tech when it happens. It doesn't always happen on schedule for us, but we will talk about some of it today. I'm Bob Ambrogi, and I have a blog called Lost Sites and a podcast called Law Next. And our panelists today are Joe. You want to kick us off?
Sure. Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. I did have a busy week today, but this week, but that's because
busy week today.
All right, it's kind of, yeah. I had a busy week, but that's because I don't only write about legal tech. So I had, if you wanted to Google Solicitor General and asteroid, you could do that and see what I've been up to.
All right, you might have to explain that. All right, Stephanie.
Hello, everyone. I am Stephanie Wilkins. I'm the Director of Content at Legal Tech Hub, and I might have to leave you all 5-10 minutes early today if we make it all the way to the end of the show and
if we make it that far. And Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal. Yeah, it was busy for me just because I was off last week, so getting caught up, from being away for that so many days is always a challenge, but glad to be back.
Yeah, well, you're also another one who's not confined to legal tech news. I mean, you've got like real legal news out there and stuff to cover as well, right?
Yeah, but so this week is one of those weeks where it's like a lot of stuff was happening, but not necessarily in this wheelhouse. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, all right. And also Steve.
Hey everybody, Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads and occasionally write for Above the Law. And I would hasten to remind everybody that it was in fact a short week because we had holiday on Monday, which has got my week screwed up completely from Monday on. But in any event, maybe that's why we're just a little slow this week.
Well, that's true. I forgot that it was a short week, and then I spent 2 days attending something that many of us attended at least part of the time that we can't talk about yet, but it will be news next week, and we'll talk about it next week. But that kind of cut into my schedule a little bit this week. So maybe the place to start is with Stephanie, who wrote about it being a slow news week.
Yeah. So a lot of you know by now that I write a regular Tuesday column, what was my own idea, and I generally do love doing it, but every now and then there's a week where I'm like, what the hell do I talk about? And this week it was mostly because I felt like maybe it was because it was a slow week. I'm not sure, but I was just like, there's no major story other than, things we've talked about a million times, like more hallucinations. So I started to write a column about how I had nothing to talk about, but then it morphed itself into a notion that we've all talked about frequently in the past, but usually right before our conference comes up, about how it'd be great if you're out there trying to get news coverage or any sort of publicity for your product release, your story, whatever it is, that it might be better to take advantage of these times when people are not saying as much, because if you go into particularly weeks leading into like a legal week or an ILTA, we cannot understate the amount of news we get in our inboxes, and it's like a fire hose, and it might even be the coolest announcement in the world, and we just don't have the capacity to even get to it, let alone, maybe get to it, but cover it. So maybe take advantage of the lull times and don't plan your big announcement for 3 days before ILTA, because it might get lost, not just from us, but from the prospects you want to reach at the conferences, or, people do their research in advance. So yeah, it was just sort of another mini soapbox from me about maybe think about the timing to your own advantage better than saving it all right when everyone else is making their big news announcements. That's how I salvaged my I have nothing to talk about this week column.
Masterful. Yeah, no, it was definitely not the big tech news week. I think that's very, very true. There were other things going on. We did have, actually, and when we were trying to set this up, I guess, Bob, you flagged there was one thing that happened this week, but none of us really wrote about, right? The Bright Flag acquisition.
Yeah,
I
Volter's
wrote
clear
it, but
acquired by
very
yeah.
briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it was pretty slow.
But also that came out after I wrote my column about how I had nothing to write about.
Of
Yeah,
course,
I
of
think it came out
course.
while I was on the plane to the other thing we had to go to.
Oh, yeah.
So that didn't happen. But it is actually interesting, the whole question of timing around trade shows, because I never actually know why companies do save it. I mean, if really what they want is press coverage of their products, then that's the worst possible time to do it, as you say, because there's just a flood of precedent releases, and we're all humans and can only handle so much and report so much, and even then, we're not really going to have the time to sit through a real demo and see what it's like, or write in any kind of depth about these products. But maybe that's not what they really want anyway. Maybe they're just trying to give their salespeople something to talk about at the booth, or I don't know, play to some investors who might be at the conference wandering around they want to talk to or something. I mean, I don't know. Maybe some of the PR people who are in the audience can share in the chat. I mean, what is the strategy behind doing that?
Well, I mean,
It
I
could be
think,
anything.
yeah, I mean, I think that is the strategy, but there's also just not the reality of how many, it's not just us writing about it, but if you're going as an investor or as a buyer or something, you're going to, especially a big conference with tons and tons of people you might want to talk to. Hopefully you might be doing some research in advance. So like, even if you do this announcement 2 weeks before the conference, it's not stale to say, hey, 2 weeks ago, we announced this big thing, as opposed to, did you see just yesterday? Because likely they didn't see just yesterday.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point.
And I think it made sense when there were only like, 3 or 4 major shows, but now it's like I mean, you guys can talk about this. I mean, there's shows every couple of weeks now. It's like, or it's just there's so many of these shows now, and you get to the point where it's like you go to a show, you don't even know who you spoke to anymore, and they're like, oh, we had this big announcement last week, and it's like, okay, well, great, is it obsolete now? Is it still good? Like is it still like something that's relevant? So it gets to the point where it's like, yeah, I mean, I understand planning because, in theory, I think everybody wants to be like Clio, right? Whereas like they unveil that the first tech show, everyone remembers that story, and then they were the buzz of that show, and then they kind of built their brand from there. But it's just like there's so many shows now. It's just like like what you could unveil something one week, and then the next week there's someone else unveil something, and then someone else unveil something, and then it just all gets lost.
I do think if it's
The other thing I think is, sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the other thing, like if it's your own user conference, like a Clio, like obviously you should get the spotlight for that. But otherwise, go ahead. Sorry, Steve.
No, I was just going to say I think it's very interesting that so many of them want to meet with us at these shows, and like it has to be at that show, that they really want to meet at that show. And then you say, well, I can't do it, but how about we have a Zoom call maybe Monday after the show? Oh, would you do that? That would be so great. It's like, well, what are we all killing ourselves for trying to do this? If that's the case, I mean, most of these guys we know anyway, so it's not like we have to have that face to face or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think there's pressure or perceived pressure. The flip side of what Victor said about the, oh, a couple weeks is obsolete, as opposed to like, it actually could use another couple weeks or a month to fully cook, but we feel like we need to have it out before we need to say we're
Yeah.
doing something. But I've definitely gone to shows where people are like, we'll even have an embargoed announcement for later, but somehow they're already talking about it out loud at their booth. So I don't know. There's a lot of different ways around it.
Then of course, we've all seen and experienced the big announcement that we go listen to and walk away going, the fuck was that all about? It's nothing.
Never. I don't know what you're
No
talking
name, no
about.
names, of course. But,
No, yeah, that never happens. Um, yeah, I don't know. It is interesting. I guess from now on, we'll just have to we'll have to set up a little schedule, and we'll tell you when you can release your news, and we'll be all
Right,
set.
right.
I mean, it is the old when it rains it pours problem too, because there will be like a week when there's like nothing happening, and then all of a sudden, get up on a Monday morning and there's like 9 million big stories happening all at once, and then you got to figure out what to do and what to cover first and what's important and what's not.
Well, I
So,
do think I put it into the universe and then a little bit more news started trickling out. So, I mean, it wasn't quite jinxing myself like I thought I would by writing this, but
yeah.
and I feel like this is another good time to always reiterate to people that we, for the most part, do love group briefings if you ever want to do things like that.
Absolutely.
We do.
It not only helps the vendors, it helps us too.
At the conferences and even
Yeah.
away from the conferences, but at the conferences, yes. Save yourself time, save yourself snack food money by putting us all in the same room at the same time and briefing us.
And you could have better snacks because you don't have as many snacks. So we would go for the better snacks.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
sure
we can gang up. Also, we can gang up on you. So we can with our snarkiness, we can all just kind of focus on one person.
yeah, I'm pretty sure at Clock, Steve like crashed me with a big briefing. Not a big briefing. He had a briefing and sat down on my table. I'm like, I can go to the other table. He's like, no, why don't you just join this? I'm like, I don't even know who you're sitting down with. So I had a surprise joint briefing with Steve with somebody. Yeah.
It worked out pretty well.
Yes, group evenings with cocktails are even better. That's absolutely right. Unless you're concerned about factual accuracy in our reporting, but that's a different story. I mean, I like, when I first started blogging about legal tech way back when, it would be like weeks when it was like just nothing. I mean, like nothing happening. It was like, you'd be like beating the bushes trying to come up with something to write about. And now it's, for the most part, it's a pretty constant stream, if not a flood some days. So I guess
Yeah.
we shouldn't complain when it's a slower week.
At any one time, do you have a ton of embargo news, or is it unusual to me? Again, it's dependent. A lot of it goes to the conference cycle. I'm just responding to the comment. Sometimes if it's leading into a conference, at one time we do have a bunch of different embargoes that we're trying to. This one's like these 3 are embargoed for day 1 of the conference. This one's embargoed for day 2 of the conference. These 2 are embargoed for day 3 of the conference. And it's super overwhelming. Like it's almost attempting to be like, I'll just cover them all after the conference at risk, rather than risk blowing an embargo by getting the days wrong.
Yeah, for the most part, the stories that are kind of provided to us are under embargo. Sometimes you'll get the email that says, "Hey, look at what we just announced," and it's a blog post on our website or something. Or then you get, or the ones that the other funny thing now is, I think we're all seeing this, but with some of the VCs, they have their favored media that's not necessarily legal media. It's more some of the more traditional Silicon Valley tech press, and so they'll want to feed those media organizations their stories first, and they'll give them an advance on something and then feed it to us afterward. The whole embargo thing is weird. I mean, sometimes the embargo kind of makes no sense because it's like, this is embargoed for a week, and then you go look at their website and it's all over their website. And you're like, well, I don't think that's an embargo. If you're publishing it on your website, well, we haven't told the news yet, but it's on your website. I mean, are you just conceding that nobody looks at your website? Is that really what it comes down to? But I don't know.
Well, also sometimes like when you see embargo, I think it makes it seem like, oh, this is really important. I think maybe they're hoping that we'll be like, oh, this is very important. We have to take this seriously. So it almost might just be a force of habit.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think it came from a really good place where initially, if you had a really big story and you wanted people to have ample time to write it up, maybe interview your people, pull a full piece together so that when the news goes live, it's not just a quick slapdash. We have this. I mean, the point of embargo makes sense. It's just when everything is suddenly embargoed all at the same time, it gets a lot tougher.
Yeah, there are some, I won't name names, but there is somebody who has a propensity to sometimes miss the embargo, not miss the embargoes, and jump the embargoes a little bit, but time zone challenges, I think, or something are going on there. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I do still like it, and you guys probably all still like it too, when somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to give this to you first, and then we'll give it to the media," and then you really feel special, and you feel like you've got something. But sometimes that first means 15 minutes or something. It's like not really a big deal, but
And either way, I am generally pro embargo. It's just
yeah.
my point is more if you know it's going to be a week, or maybe if you don't, now we are telling you there are certain weeks that you will be one of 50 things we get in our inbox.
Yeah, just from a workflow basis, I'm pro embargo because it's like I'd rather you tell me you're going to be announcing news a week from now and mean I can fit it into my schedule to write about it rather than you say we just dropped this and I'm like, oops, I'm in the middle of something else and I got to drop it and try and cover it. So yeah, it definitely makes life easier
Absolutely.
and it gives us all a fair shot at it too. So. Uh, Oh yeah, we could do it. We should do it. Like, didn't we once do a show on like PR tips or something, or
Yeah,
our preferences?
early
Oh
on.
yeah, we
Yeah,
did. Yeah, we
yeah.
did. Yeah.
We should do that again sometime. We're kind of doing that right now, I guess. But not that anybody will listen to us. But
Yeah, that could be pre-Ilticon or something, as there's nothing that we can actually write about because it's all embargoed.
Andrew's
I mean,
listening.
not
Andrew doesn't need any PR tips. He's got it all figured out. All right. So, well, should we talk about actual stories, or were there any to talk about this week?
Well, let's just keep talking about get off my grass stuff.
I know I've been on a soapbox kick lately, so
Yeah, well, I was already in a grumpy mood this week, so if you want me to just complain for the next 30 minutes, it's like we can just do
no,
that.
we can turn the whole show into like an Andy Rooney kind of thing, where it's like we take some random thing that we're upset about, it's like pontificate about it.
I like that. I like that. Showing like half the people listening will have no idea who Andy Rooney even was anymore.
Hallucinations.
More-
Don't you hate it when
I see. I'm still pissed off about random cat like how a lot of tech firms just randomly capitalize letters. I'm like that really annoys me.
Oh my God.
Oh, you mean like lawyers do?
I don't know if Sarah is in the audience this week, but Sarah Glassmeyer, because she does our directory, we have a basically constant running Slack between us about like, wait, they capitalized that middle letter, but not the first letter, or this one is all caps, or this is this, or they just changed it at one point and didn't tell anybody. And just like the naming conventions, we could decide what people name their things in general, but the spelling conventions and the naming conventions, we have endless material on this if we ever want to have that discussion.
Well, I assume if you do it on like Microsoft Word, probably like every single name is probably like has a squiggly line underneath it as a possible misspelling.
Seriously.
Yeah,
and then
that's
even
a whole.
when I say once ignore this, it still underlines everyone and doesn't ignore that. Yeah.
Like, how do you handle companies that want their name to be all caps, even though it's not an acronym?
Sometimes it's actually a like trademark IP kind of reason or something. So I do try to just do it the way they do it.
Yeah, I actually try and do it the way they used to do it, only because I don't even have an AP style book anymore. But I used to follow AP style, and AP style book was basically always like, however they want you to use their name, that's what you do, basically. And so I went by that. But like even like ABA Tech Show, like Tech Show is all capitalized the way the ABA does it.
Right.
But I don't. That one, I think I remember once looking into it once, like how did that start to be that way? Because Tech Show is clearly not an acronym. It's a word in a sense. It's a name.
Yeah, but we don't. But when we write about it in the journal, we don't use that. We write it as just text, like capital T. But then we do the one word thing.
Wow.
Oh, thanks, Victor.
Wow.
For letting us know that how many years later?
being disrespected by your own in-house publication. Like, honestly, though, I was kind of hoping that when you said it doesn't stand for anything, that Steve was about to go, actually, and it was going to be some awesome, like, but no.
Technology energizing new, no, technology energizing. I don't know. What to think about that one for now.
Yeah, this also gets into I can go on certain rants about things about AP style that I hate, and that's one of them. So I'm just like, nope, that is not in my style guide. To like, yeah.
Which one? Using names like the way the company say it?
do not you do that. Be like, oh, we don't care how the company spells it. We think you should, capitalize VLEX as capital or eBay as capital E. What's stupid? I don't care.
Oh, okay.
Well, when I was at ALM, we refused to we would not do like how some law firms they'll be like Wilmer. They'll be like, we want to be known as Wilmer Hale. Like, well, but then their formal name is like Wilmer Cutler something
Yeah.
something.
Right.
So we would be like, no, we're gonna use the actual like even if we would save space, because then it'd be like, oh well, we got to cut a line. Like, well, why don't we just use the fucking use the fucking brand name, and that way we save like half a line.
I was impressed. I did not realize I assumed they had changed their name legally. It wasn't until they filed the lawsuit against Trump that I was like, huh, they're still Wilbur Cutler, I guess.
No, that's still the ALM rule with actually for the first mention of it has to be the full big official name. Then after that, it could be Wilmer Hale. But yeah, that's still their rule there.
Nick Hafen nails it for the tech show acronym there. Technology empowering change and human-centered solutions for higher outcomes in workplace.
There you go.
I like it.
I knew that
Perfect.
it was that way all along. I just wanted to see if somebody could guess it.
Perfect.
Now, if we could only figure out what the ABA part stands for, I don't know.
Oh, let's not go there. That could get dangerous.
All right. Anybody have any stories they want to talk about?
I did my part. You all know.
Stories.
You did your
Stories.
part.
Stories. What's that?
Or should we just rant more about things? What else can we rant about?
I feel like that's a cue for Joe. I don't know.
Cool. That's totally fair. So my rant related. So a couple weeks back, I broke on this show. There was another this is where we need a sound effect for hallucination screw up. Another one of those where I wrote about Butler Snow, who had gotten tagged with a big fake case situation in Alabama, in a case where they're representing a prison official for in a case where one of the inmates has been stabbed 20 times over multiple different occasions, which impressive. They're defending the prison official. They had some fake cases in there. Their response eventually came out. Their response was, oh, we're so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Here's what happened. We'll fix it. But the part that kind of bugged me and got me on my rant this week is I started playing around on the Wayback Machine, which I've been doing a lot of as these law firms try to change their websites to cover up all the bad things they're doing, mostly not tech-wise, but just generally. And I looked to see what was up, and as it turns out, there was a blog post the day before this hallucination problem where one of their smart lawyers was explaining, hey, you might be hearing about AI, you might be feeling like you're behind the curve on it. Here's what you can do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, kind of talking about what the tool is capable of, what its limits are, what your responsibilities are. I thought it was, short and sweet, but it was the sort of content that lawyers probably need to be having, a conversation they need to be having within their firms. It gets deleted immediately once this happens, which seemingly as though there was a giant purge of any time they suggested AI might be good ever, got purged from their website once this went down. And that's unfortunate, and I worry that we talk a lot about people getting their heads over their skis and jumping into AI stuff and using it for situations it shouldn't be used for and getting in trouble. Not quite as much about the flip side of that, which I think is the overcorrection problem, which is I think there's going to be a lot of firms, especially firms that are maybe not playing on the same tech playing field that we cover a lot, firms like a Butler Snow, kind of a southern regional firm, that might get in trouble and overcorrect. And this felt like an overcorrection. This felt like we're going to get rid of that. We're going to have training and we're going to have a new policy, they said. They didn't get into details as to what it was, but it certainly felt like that new policy was going to be some draconian crackdown on not letting anybody even use Grammarly or something like that. And that's what I think we don't talk about enough necessarily, is that some of these firms are going to overcorrect in bad ways. And they're going to throw out baby bathwater situations. And that's going to be really sad and I think counterproductive for them. But that was kind of my rant for this week, was just seeing how the fallout from that particular case made me think about this problem. That's all. That was my rant. There you go.
Well, the corollary problem to that, Joe, too, is when you do stuff like that and put in place these draconian measures, people don't follow them. They just don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
so you not only you don't achieve your aim, but you make it worse, because now people are doing it undercover and without any safeguards. So it's crazy. Yeah.
Well, although I mean, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, I mean, they haven't. Maybe if this forces them to like come up with some kind of policy for AI use that makes sense and has guardrails in place for the lawyers and is actually a good way of kind of keeping everybody in line and keeping everybody honest, then great. Then this this whatever like this some good came out of all this, right? But of course, but then if they do what Joe's saying, they're like, okay, nobody can use anything that has any kind of AI in it, then yeah, I mean that's I mean
Yeah.
they're gonna realize that it's as their lawyers are working like hours and hours and hours to like produce the same stuff that their rival firm is churning out in minutes, and then they'll understand that what the problems are.
Yeah.
Let's say it comes from the same place as the knee-jerk reactions of those, judicial standing orders, right? Of like, oh, people who
Absolutely.
no AI for anybody. This is why we can't have nice things. Which, yeah, I don't know.
Remember when
I
law
will
firms told lawyers they couldn't use smartphones, they had to stick with their Blackberries or whatever.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
lasted for a long time.
Yeah.
I
It
used
was
to.
really annoying. It was really annoying to carry around multiple devices. So I'm going to throw in another thing that I just thought of while we were having this conversation. I don't know if anybody else saw this. It wasn't properly in legal tech circles, but it was in like the social media tech, just generally circles I saw. Did anybody see the gold rush tweet that kind of got some virality about the AI gold rush? Because
No.
it did relate to legal. All right, so there was a social media post that kind of did the rounds this week that was really that got me, and it was about a law firm, sort of. It was just a tech guy bragging that he's getting 35 grand to help a law firm adopt AI, but he detailed what it is, and they're not getting anything like super fancy. What this guy's giving them is he's like taking OpenAI and dumping that onto a private server so that they have their own instance of it, and that's it. He's charging 35 grand.
I
And
mean,
yeah.
does this guy want to have more clients in the future? Why would he? Why would he do that?
Well, but the thing is, he's selling it like, yeah, now I'm doing this and whatever. And what kind of why it got handed around by so many people were, holy shit, this is like 10 minutes of work, and this guy's charging 35 grand, and people are paying it. And a lot of people also started sharing it, going like, I told you once, if you aren't in on the AI gold rush, you need to be. And it did have that feel that like, if all you need to do is give them a custom GPT on their own on-prem server, and you can get away with charging 35 grand for it. I'm willing to go into business with anybody who is a little more tech savvy than me on that, because that sounds like a pretty good deal.
Well, I think that person just blew their own cover.
Well, it's a Bond villain thing, where it's like you just like you can't help but brag about it. Where it's like, okay, well, I have this foolproof plan that's gonna totally kill James Bond, and I'm gonna take over the world, and I'm so smart. Look at me. Or who knows? Maybe he didn't think that it was gonna really. Maybe he thought it was a way of generating more business for himself, right? He thought, all right,
Yeah.
well, as long as it gets out to other law firms who also have this problem, they can call me. So
I mean, it was very, very much presented as, yeah, look, this is absolutely worth this. Look at what I'm doing. It was the other techies who were passing it around going like, wait a minute, you're really charging? You're able to get away with charging that for this amount of work? Which,
If he threw in a couple of like templated prompts, then he could unveil a major new legal tech product.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very cryptic, Bob.
that's embargoed until next week, right?
I was going to say I love
I
that
wasn't talking about anybody in particular. No,
Of course.
No.
Victor was playing our internal optimist today, like twice in a row. He's like, "Hey, maybe they meant well by that."
Maybe.
Like,
Yeah.
sure.
All right.
Yeah, what's wrong with me? I'm usually not that guy. What's going on?
Optimism is so low today. I don't know.
I will really worry when Joe turns into that guy. That's
I know.
that is when it's all over.
We'll just get Nikki back on and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
They're trying to make money. They're terrible.
Always positive. Yeah.
There
Well,
was
it's just
somebody
the
in the chat who
simulation.
said we should talk about the latest AI defamation case, which we
Yeah.
actually had on our story log
There
for
we go.
this week. The latest AI, maybe it's not the latest one they're talking about. I don't know, maybe it's a later one, but we did have an AI defamation case to talk about this week. And that would be Mr. Sunshine, Victor.
Okay, let's not go too far here.
Okay, bring us
there
down.
there are limits to my optimism. You know, I mean, yeah, I like my optimism pretty much ended when I mean, I think I used some of my optimism this week when the Knicks came back and won when they won game 5. So we'll see how that goes after that. But yeah, so there's a so yeah, I mean this case has been kind of I think we talked about it on the show when it first got filed. Or I could be wrong, but yeah, there's a radio host who's I guess he claims that he's the loudest voice in America fighting for gun rights. Although I thought that was Ted Nugent personally, that who was the loudest voice
Yeah.
fighting for gun rights. But apparently this guy is louder, so go figure. But so ChatGPT, I mean, it's, like I guess a journalist was doing a profile on him, and ChatGPT, and he asked ChatGPT about this guy Mark Walters, and ChatGPT falsely said that Walters was uh, defrauding and embezzling funds from the Second Amendment Foundation, and so obviously that was untrue. It wasn't it was not the case. So Walter sued OpenAI and for defamation, and the decision came down on oh well it came down on the 19th, but for whatever reason we wrote about it this week. So uh, but um but yeah, like basically the judge the judge ruled in favor of OpenAI. Just said that there wasn't actual malice behind the information, and they make it clear on there that not all the information is to be taken at face value, that you have to you can't just trust everything that it comes up with, that there's a possibility for information that is not accurate. And so they said that no reasonable reader would have understood that ChatGPT contained actual facts. um I was like, well, okay, but we know some people who would and we've talked about some people on the show who would assume that everything on there is accurate. So it was interesting, sort of how they phrased some of it, like just like, well, of course, no one's gonna think that all this stuff is accurate. It's like, well, I don't know how correct that is, but. So it'll be interesting. I'm sure this will get appealed and whatnot. And there were other things involving damages, and they said that he wasn't actually damaged by it, and he's a public figure, so there's a higher bar to prove defamation. So in a lot of ways it was a very basic First Amendment claim, but with the AI stuff added in there.
I didn't understand. Maybe I didn't follow the story right, but how did the radio guy know that the reporter had asked ChatGPT about that when the reporter didn't use it in the story?
I think he asked uh the DJ. Yeah, I think he asked them like, hey, is it true that you did this? Like, no, where'd you hear that from?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
There's another case with an Australian politician at one point too that was claiming it, where it was like he was like an anti-corruption politician, and it said that he had been like jailed for corruption or something like
Right.
that, like major.
I mean, I think this is like parallel to the legal cases in the sense that journalists, like lawyers, have an obligation to verify things before they use them. And if you go to a single source on the internet and it tells you something, I mean, again, depending on the source, depending on the context, depending on what it's telling you, you need to make a judgment call. But when it's something that is even potentially defamatory, you kind of want to check it out.
Yeah.
The old joke about journalists is if your mother says she loves you, check it out, and
Right.
verify it. So, it's the same thing we're seeing with lawyers and using hallucinated cases. I mean, in this case, the journalist apparently did the right thing and did check it out and didn't use it. But the fact that that ChatGPT said something that was false, I mean, it doesn't, to me, it wouldn't make sense that should be defamation in itself.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think, yeah, like there was that LinkedIn thing that some of us did a few weeks ago where we asked ChatGPT or just one of these things about ourselves, and and stuff came out that was about us that some of us that wasn't true. It's just these things happen. It's not I mean, thankfully for me, it wasn't anything like, hey, Victor Lee was convicted of robbing a bank in blah blah blah. It's like, well, how'd they find that out? I mean, no, I never did that. So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, like you have to assume this stuff is not gospel, but unfortunately, too many people out there do believe it is. So
Like the fact that it always assumes that Nikki or I are men because we write about tech.
Mm.
Well, I
Interesting.
don't know about that, but clearly Nikki is an avatar. That's been proven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no,
She's
same. Like I did the same thing once, and got so far. They're like, "Oh, you're a writer in Brooklyn," so it made me like a white dude with a hipster beard. It was very.
Oh, right, the pictures. Yeah, I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Oh,
well,
I
they
forgot.
thought
Yeah.
they thought I
Oh.
wrote a book about Kim Jong Il. I'm like, why? Because I'm Asian? You assume that I wrote it?
That's
I
just a
was tagged as a professor at the University of Louisville, which I never went to. So
Well, you don't
mine
have
was
to have
pretty
gone there
good.
to teach there.
Mine was incredibly accurate. I don't know why everyone else is having these issues.
I don't even remember what are we talking about? What were these? What?
GPT unveiled a new feature where you could ask it about you
Oh,
based on
yeah,
your
yeah, that's
interactions
Yeah.
right.
with
Yeah,
it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
once it had memory, it'd be like based on everything we've talked
That's right.
about. What do I
That's
look
right.
like, or what do you know about
That's
me?
right. That's right.
Like,
I
what do
forgot
you
about that.
know about me was much more accurate than what do I look like, even though every week of my column I generate a fake picture of myself. I still thought I
Yeah.
was.
Did you all
Mine
do the
was like,
fake action figure thing too? Were you?
no, I did
Yeah.
not. I should
Oh,
have.
I made a ton of those from with my dogs though.
Oh, okay. Mine's
Yeah.
Mine said, where others quote Blackstone, you quote Beyonce and Blackstone. And I was like, yeah, that's actually pretty good. That's actually a pretty good description.
That's a good one. Yeah.
All right. I don't remember if I did that.
Yeah.
Uh,
In case anybody hasn't already noticed, yes, it was a slow news week.
this is much more fun than talking about the news.
Mm.
But let's see, we can talk about cyber threats to law firms and
Oh,
lawyers increasing and real. Now, there's some breaking
well,
news.
it's so no, the thing about this article, it was in Upper News, and apparently the FBI has issued a warning that there's a group that are specifically targeting law firms, and I'd always kind of known that their law firms could be targets and are targets. I never heard of a group that was particularly looking just at law firms and targeting them. So that was a little new and different. And the way these guys, Luna Moth was the name of the organization. I'm sure they came up with that. But so what they were doing is, fairly standard. They would call somebody in the firm and say they're with T department and I need to have remote access to fix a problem. And so once they gained that, then they were in. But the sort of the interesting thing about that, I was thinking back to when I was practicing in the firm I was with. So we outsourced most of the help desk related stuff to a vendor, and to this day, I could not tell you the name of that vendor. I have no clue. I don't even know if I ever knew it, but I certainly couldn't remember it now. So I think a lot of firms kind of do that, and it sort of gets you in a spot where you could get a call from, "Hey, I'm with Bloppity Blop Blop, your help desk vendor, and I need a remote in." You wouldn't, it wouldn't be surprising. I mean, I can
Hmm.
think back to my time. Of course, that was a few years ago. But I wouldn't have been immediately going, "Who now? Who are you?" If somebody said something like that to me. So thought it was kind of an interesting approach and an interesting kind of. So now law firms really are in the crosshairs. Somebody has actually said, those guys, we could probably make a lot of money going after those guys. So that's kind of a little bit of a turn from where we were before, I think. And as we all know, law firms are notoriously lax with security, and lawyers are notoriously bad at getting training and all the same things that make us somewhat easy targets. So I told you at the
Yeah.
beginning I couldn't fill much time with that one, but there you go.
Yeah. I mean, there have been hackers who have targeted law firms in the past. I mean, maybe in addition to targeting a larger group of organizations, but there's definitely been like phishing campaigns that have gone after law firms. And remember the one just a couple of years ago with the celebrity law firm that they represented all the Hollywood clients or something, and they had gotten access to I don't know, Madonna's files or something like that, and a bunch of celebrity files, and were holding out for some kind of a ransom in that case. Uh, it gets confusing. I mean, I actually like today. I got a like somebody sending me like a DocuSign or something, and it was like I had it was from an email address from somebody I knew, but it was like it just didn't smell right. And so I just like skipped over that and emailed the guy directly and said, "Did you send me this?" And and honestly, I got the response. I'm still suspicious because the response was like somewhat coherent rather. Um, and it could have been just because he quickly typed it on his phone, or it could have been because he really did get hacked or something. I don't know what's going on. So I think I'm not going to look at the document.
Yeah,
But
the interesting one, a lot of people have identified, it's not connected with lawyers, but you get the text that, oh, you didn't pay your toll on the toll road, and and the funny thing about that is I was actually going through a toll booth, and about 30 seconds later I got one of those things. I thought, well, shit, I thought I had the easy pass.
sure you did,
So,
Steve. Sure you did.
well, it said I did. So.
Yeah. Um, let's see. I mean, I really had like nothing to write about this. I did post an interview um, that Cornell Winston, who's the president of the American Association of Law Libraries, and their annual meeting is coming up in 6 weeks, about mid July, I think it is. I usually go to that. I'm signed up to go this year. Um, some things have come up that I may end up not going. I can't decide. A little on the fence about it, but it's in
I need
Portland,
to go to
Oregon.
that. Yeah, I need to
You're
go to
gonna
that
go?
one. Yeah, I am. I haven't asked yet, but I need to do that.
They'll
I'll
they
go.
will they will give you a pass for sure, a press pass
And
for
it's
Excellent.
sure. I'm sure. It's like July 19th,
19th through
20th, something
something.
like that. It's like a Saturday to a Tuesday or something in
In
But
Portland, Oregon.
but
Thursday.
I'm from Portland,
That's
so it
right too. You're
allows
from
it gives me
Portland.
an opportunity to like I'll just stay an extra week afterwards or something. So I'll definitely do
Yeah.
that.
Um, but he was actually interesting. I've interviewed a lot of the AALL presidents at some point in their tenures. But he is a law librarian in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, which I thought was kind of interesting. Usually they're like law firm librarians or something like that that I talk to, and so it's kind of funny because as much as he's the president of this organization that's grappling with AI and all sorts of other cutting edge issues, they're not allowed to use AI in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, and they have no AI tools whatsoever. And some of the issues, government. You talk about how government attorneys are having to grapple with issues of, certain, funding being cut back and certain titles perhaps being discontinued in their libraries, and kind of a different perspective, but. Um, I've always kind of maintained that law librarians are one of the guys, we used to have Gene O'Grady on the show, obviously, who's a prime example of the fact that law librarians are somewhat, to some extent, kind of guardians of the gate in terms of helping to vet technology at law firms and other organizations, and helping both to protect law firms, helping make smart decisions about this stuff. And his whole theme for this year's AALL convention is "Be Bold." That's the theme of the convention, but it's all about the fact that he thinks that law librarians, in a sense, need to be a little more aggressive about kind of you know, acknowledging, getting their organizations to acknowledge their experience, their expertise, and kind of giving them a seat at the table in terms of talking about, having a role in making some of these big decisions around cutting edge technologies. So I thought it was a kind of interesting interview. I look forward to the conference, which is, I've always said, one of the sort of the less heralded kind of tech conferences. I mean, most of the exhibitors there are tech exhibitors, and most of the programming at AALL has some, not just some connection to tech, but we've seen just over the last couple of years, like the one of the few benchmarking studies that's come out in terms of legal AI, Gen AI, and legal, other than the one that Stephanie's company helped sponsor. But the Southern California Law Librarians did this really interesting benchmarking study. A few years ago, they had done a great benchmarking study of the AALL, I think, had done a great benchmarking study of some of the analytics tools that were out there, and how they compared and which were better. I guess I'm just kind of ranting a little bit in favor of law librarians and AALL as a kind of a real tech conference, and as law librarians is kind of playing an important role in tech adoption.
I did enjoy it. I've only gone once. I went a couple years ago. I did enjoy it. So
yeah, I've gone several times. I think it's a good conference. They're just the approach that they have to the issues is a little bit different.
I feel like it was one of the conferences that I learned so much from the questions people asked at the sessions, because librarians were not shy about getting up and just like asking panelists tons of questions, and they were really interesting.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Well, you should go this year, because then we can get, like, Joe can show us, like, here's the little boyhood home I grew up in, and where I used to hike through the snow
Yeah.
to school and all
Here's
that
Doesn't-
stuff.
broke my
Doesn't
arm.
really snow.
How it bends a weird way.
We can see the room
that
where
was in
Joe grew up.
That was in Wisconsin where I broke my arm, so that I won't be able to do that. But yeah,
Go to the Joe Museum.
We take a field trip to the Goonies Beach. I know it's not right.
that is a ways out of the way, but yeah, you can do that.
Nice. Well, I mean,
Anything else? That's all we got. That's all we got.
We probably should say, congratulations to Filevine on a nice, healthy exit, as they got bought by Walters Kluwer. But
Bright Flag, you mean?
Bright Flag, yeah. Bright Flag.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'll say,
You just said Filevine.
that would not be a slow.
Wait a
That would
minute, I
not be a
missed
slow
something
news.
here.
I just hallucinated live on air. That's
Yeah.
fine.
I'll say that would not be a slow news week if that.
I was looking at something else. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, Bright Flag. Yes, we'll go back and
You
edit
got me
that.
excited that maybe I missed a big story after all.
Yep, totally hallucinated that one out of my brain. But AI is just like us. But yeah, I mean, awesome 425 million euro exit. Good for them.
Yeah, that is good for them, and good for Wolters Kluwer.
Yeah.
And it also reflects, I think, in a sense, that Wolters Kluwer, again, trying to, so, something we're seeing with a bunch of legal tech companies, which is trying to move up or down in the market. And Wolters Kluwer is kind of more of a move more into that mid-market space for them. So
Yeah, I mean,
makes a lot of
it's
sense.
pretty interesting, since they do have their own ELM solutions, and then they bought a different ELM provider. That's exactly what the rationale was, which is interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, next week we can talk about the news we can't talk about this week. So there will be that. We know there will be that, and hopefully there will be some other news to talk about next week as well.
Yeah.
Maybe FileVine will get acquired next week.
Maybe
my God.
FileVine will get acquired, or
That's
maybe
gonna like
FileVine will
show
buy
up.
Walters Kluwer.
That's gonna like
Uh,
show up in searches now, and it's gonna be like, according to
Right.
maybe they'll hallucinate who I am. Also, that's not it.
Somebody's going to run a search in ChatGPT and find out that File Bounty's been acquired.
I don't even know. That is the signal that I should have left 10
Maybe
minutes early.
FileVine will acquire Legal Tech Week, and we will all be really rich next week. So
Maybe they'll acquire Walter's Kluwer. I don't know.
yeah, all right. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for joining us this week and for bearing with us on a slow news week. Although I do think, maybe we should formalize we should set aside one episode to do maybe kind of more like not just random like stream of consciousness tips, but like here's our latest update on tips for people who want to contact the media or get their stories in the media or whatever else. Because I think that was a good show when we did it, but it's way out of date. And we can do it again. So, all right. Everybody have a good week.
Have a good weekend. Take care.
See ya.